A critical error with a life-saving treatment.
So it just says, Lisa, you've been given an overdose of radiation. And Lisa said to him, am I going to die?
I couldn't answer that.
Lisa Norris wasn't the only one.
He said, unfortunately, you've had all the radiation in the 2 weeks. My 10-year-old daughter couldn't have made a mistake like that.
It's a treatment which saves lives, but some say the NHS is failing Britain's cancer patients.
It's not good. It's embarrassing. What can we do about it? My belief, it's not just money. It's got to be a whole new system of working.
Tonight on Frontline, Lisa Norris, the teenager overdosed with radiation as she battled with cancer. Did she die because the NHS failed to learn critical lessons from previous mistakes? And we look at radiotherapy itself, a treatment now in the firing line.
She was just some lassie. She was very lovable, and I loved her so much.
She was always jolly and very friendly and honest girl. I'll never be the same.
In 2005, Lisa Norris was a normal, healthy teenage girl. She lived with her family in Girvan on the Ayrshire coast. At the end of that year, she began to feel unwell.
She started being sick and sore heads, and we noticed there was a twist in her eye. We took her to the opticians, and he says you were better going back to your doctor.
He says there is actually something there. We were told it was a brain tumour, and it was just like a bombshell to us. It was terrible. I think we must have greeted for about 2 hours after. And it's the most depressing thing anybody has to be told, that their child has got cancer.
The Norrises were told Lisa's cancer was operable. After the surgery, she would need chemotherapy, followed by a course of radiotherapy on the tumour in her brain at the Beatson Oncology Centre in Glasgow.
Lisa just sat there and said, well, if it's happened to me, she says, I'll fight it. And I'll fight it to the end, she says.
Lisa's defiance didn't falter, even as the physical effects of her treatment became clear.
She would try to make a fool of you with her wig. I can remember one time coming down the road in the car, and somebody was sitting at a set of traffic lights, and she says, wait till you see this. And she pulled her wig off, and the person went, oh, look at that. Yeah, she was jolly.
In January 2006, Lisa Norris began an intensive course of radiotherapy at the Beatson Oncology Centre in Glasgow. It's the second largest in the UK. Now, half of all cancer patients will be treated with radiotherapy. It's highly specialised and highly effective, but it's not without its dangers.
Radiotherapy involves the use of X-rays, high-energy X-rays. It can destroy both cancer cells and normal cells, but cancer cells can't repair the damage, so they basically die. Normal cells repair the damage, so they recover.
Professor Carl Sikora is the former head of cancer treatment at the World Health Organization.
Radiation is very dangerous. If it's given correctly, however, it's very safe. The art of good radiotherapy is all about targeting it correctly and delivering it over a period of time that maximizes the ability of the radiation to damage the cancer but not damage normal tissue.
It's vital those who are managing each patient's treatment plan are meticulous in calibrating the linear accelerator, the machine which delivers the radiation, and in monitoring the doses.
The treatment plan is decided really by two groups of professionals. The first are the radiotherapists. The consultant decides the sort of dose to give. Then the physicist, they look at the configuration, the safety, and the computer plan of how exactly to give the beam.
I've got burns in the back of my neck and down my ears. I'm starting to blister, and at night I can't sleep because I can't lie on my back.
We were told there would be some side effects. There might be reddening of the skin, that type of thing, but they could give her cream to help cool the redness. But we noticed that when we put the cream on, it just run off. Her skin was starting to turn to water, and we got her into the shower, and it was just like when the water hit her head, it just like evaporated, as if you had put water in a hot pan, and just you could see it going to bubbles, and we didn't know what to think, and we asked them, and they said no, it was just in the treatment.
But she still had to keep going back for this treatment.
She still had to go back and forward for the treatment, yes.
In your minds, this was going to save her life?
Yes. Yes.
What the Norrises didn't know was that a terrible error had occurred during the crucial planning stage of Lisa's treatment. One of the physicists had written down the wrong number on her chart, massively increasing Lisa's dose of radiation. She had already undergone 19 treatments. Now the hospital had to tell Lisa and her family about the overdose. They didn't tell them how it had happened.
They said that Lisa's not getting any more radiation. And I thought, why? Oh, and Lisa was fear jumping because she wasn't getting any more radiation. And he says it's okay for Lisa, but it's not very good for us.
What did you take from his comment? What did you think he meant at the time?
We didn't know what to make of that.
3 days later, 2 consultants and a nurse turned up at their door. They were about to explain exactly what the doctor had meant when he'd said the conclusion of Lisa's treatment wouldn't be good news for the Beatson.
Well, they come to the door and I invited them in. And Lisa was sitting here as well in the room. And they just said it outright. They didn't say anything else. They just said, Lisa, you've been given an overdose of radiation. And then Lisa turned round to them and says, am I going to see my 16th birthday? They never answered her. So she asked them again, and they said they didn't know.
They said probably.
And then they said, probably, you'll see your 16th birthday. And Lisa said to them, am I going to be paralysed? They couldn't answer her.
Am I going to die?
Am I going to die?
They couldn't answer that either.
No.
At each of her 19 treatments, as the machine fired radiation into Lisa's body to kill her brain tumour, it was in fact firing a dose far in excess of what was intended and of what was safe. Lisa had received 58% more radiation than her treatment plan called for.
19 treatments like that would cause serious damage. So what it does is essentially cause the brain cells to die, the normal brain cells to die, to be replaced by fibrous tissue. And that eventually leads to poor function of the brain and, in some patients, disastrous consequences.
I could be brain damaged, I could be paralysed. Later down in the future, like 10 to 15 years, I could not be here. It's just time will tell if anything's going to happen.
The radiation did seem to have some effect on Lisa's tumour. 5 months later, MRI scans revealed it had shrunk to a shadow. But as the summer wore on, she became unwell.
She actually felt being sick, and she started to bring this sort of like, I call it sort of like gunge. It was between chocolate and treacle.
tests revealed Lisa's brain had hardened. The Norris family claim one of Lisa's doctors told them in a chance meeting in a car park what he believed had caused this to happen.
He said it was actually the radiation had done this.
Was that the first time that you realised the extent of the damage that the radiation had done?
Yes, that's the first time we realised it. Yes.
Lisa's condition deteriorated rapidly. As well as vomiting this brown gunge, she lost the use of her legs and had difficulty talking and eventually breathing.
It was like something stuck on her chest, really deep, deep breathing. And eventually she just slipped away.
She was gasping.
Mm-hmm.
She was gasping for air.
Yeah.
She just kept gasping, and then all of a sudden, she just got her last gasp, and that was it.
She just passed away. Yeah.
And we were all there.
Lisa Norris was just 16 when she died. The devastating chain of events which had led to her overdose was then made public. A report by Dr. Arthur Johnston confirmed the critical error had been made by an inexperienced radiotherapy planner. Staff shortages and out-of-date training records all helped contribute to the mistake. 6 days after the report was published, the post-mortem results concluded Lisa had died from cancer. For Ken and Liz Norris, the tragedy of Lisa's death is compounded by their belief it was radiotherapy, the treatment meant to cure her, which killed their daughter. They've now commissioned an independent report which they believe will prove once and for all what caused Lisa's death.
These people shouldn't be allowed to work in the NHS. What they've done is unforgivable, and we will fight it on. It doesn't matter if it takes 10 years, we'll still be going on with it.
We'll take it to the bitter end.
Yes.
What happened to Lisa Norris made headlines around the world. Unfortunately, her case wasn't a one-off. 18 months earlier, the treatment of another patient at the Beatson had also gone wrong.
I vaguely remember a nurse saying to us, you know, that you have to have the treatment because basically you wouldn't survive without it.
Sarah MacDonald's husband James was 46 when doctors discovered a lump on his neck in 2004. He was to undergo an intensive course of chemotherapy followed by radiotherapy targeted at the right side of his neck at the Beatson. But like Lisa, James's treatment didn't go according to plan.
I'd gone to visit him one day and the doctor came through and he said, pulled the curtain around the bed and said, "I'm very sorry," he says, "but we've been treating the wrong side of your neck." They'd obviously gone to the other side of his neck rather than the side that had the cancer tumour in it.
I mean, if a surgeon takes out the wrong kidney or amputates the wrong leg, we have a major investigation. This is at the same level of seriousness.
You'd put it at the same level?
I would. The consequences are as disastrous for the individual.
Despite the disaster, neither Sarah nor James, whose health was by now deteriorating rapidly, had the heart to make a formal complaint.
The doctor said to us at the time, "Do you want us to take it further?" And James was just one of these people and said, no. You know, he just wouldn't. He didn't like people getting into trouble.
On the 7th of February 2005, James died of cancer. Exactly 1 year later, Sarah MacDonald turned on the television to hear about the mistake which had happened to Lisa Norris. A mistake made at the same hospital where James had also been treated.
Stomach just turned over. I just thought, you know, why has it happened again?
What do you think James's reaction would have been to the Lisa Norris case?
I think he'd probably be quite horrified that, you know, they hadn't learned anything from what after it happened to him.
The Beatson's medical director declined to give us an interview about these two mistakes. The Scottish executive, however, gave us this statement.
Every year, around 12,000 life-saving radiotherapy treatments are successfully delivered across Scotland. Nearly 5,000 of these take place at the Beatson, with only a handful of reported errors, almost all of which present minimal risk to the patient. Nevertheless, the Lisa Norris report highlighted significant lessons which must be learned across Scotland. Following that report, immediate inspections of Scotland's 5 cancer radiotherapy centres took place, and we are working closely with each centre to identify areas of potential improvement.
Both mistakes, James MacDonald's and Lisa Norris's, were made at the Beatson. 2 serious mistakes within 18 months. Now, we'd known about Lisa's overdose because it had been in the press, but James's mistake had lain buried. Were there more we didn't know about? Under the Freedom of Information Act, we asked how many mistakes had been made at all of Scotland's cancer centres. We were told that in the last 10 years there have been 36 serious adverse incidents. They cover everything from overdoses to doses in the wrong part of the body to one patient who received radiotherapy when he didn't need it. 27 of these serious incidents were at the Beatson. The story of Lisa Norris was the first time the public was made fully aware of errors like these. Well, it may have been news to us, but it wasn't news to the NHS. It knew the mistakes were happening, but did it know why? This is the Cookridge Hospital in Leeds. In 2004, a breast cancer patient received 14 overdoses of radiation. An investigation was ordered. It was carried out by an expert in risk analysis, Professor Brian Toft.
Each person believed that what they'd done was correct. For the life of them, none of them could understand why it had taken place.
Professor Toft discovered the 12 people administering the treatment had misread one word on the linear accelerator, the machine which delivers the radiotherapy. Yet how could all 12 radiographers make such a mistake over and over again without realising it?
It was manic, it was chaotic. They were running around trying to get people to the machine and from the machine. They had interruptions and distractions. People come in saying, "Is Mrs. Jones ready yet? I've got a bus here ready to take her home." So the radiographers were under a tremendous amount of pressure. Unfortunately, those kind of situations are not conducive to error-free working.
Radiographers work in pairs, each checking the other's work to guard against mistakes. But Professor Toft found the pressurised conditions meant this safety system had broken down.
I've called it ambiguous accountability. If you and I, Sam, are doing a check, who's doing the check? Are you doing it? Am I doing it? Are we both doing it? Supposing a patient calls, somebody makes a cough or a noise and I look away and you look away at the same time. Who exactly is carrying out that check? My findings were that people were in a high-pressurised situation, highly likely that this ambiguous accountability came into play, and as a consequence of that, the errors occurred one after another after another.
Professor Toft's report was alarming, and not just for the Cookridge Hospital. Staff at cancer centres across the UK report facing the same pressures and working under the same stressful conditions as those in Leeds. This means the potential for other similar, simple mistakes with far-reaching consequences, is huge. What were people's reactions when your report was published?
My report was never published, Sam. What we did do is we contacted the Chief Medical Officers. His team sent out an alert to every hospital, as far as I know, in the UK.
It was about 6 lines like a telegram, and in my view was not very helpful. I think that the important thing about these reports is that they should be fully published, as you say, to get the information out to the profession to make sure that there isn't a replication of the error.
If the Toft report had been circulated in full around every cancer centre in the UK, including the Beatson, would that have greatly reduced the chances of Lisa Norris receiving an overdose? Well, we asked Professor Toft to take a look at the Johnston report into Lisa's case to see if there were any parallels with his findings at the Cookridge.
I found it interesting that at the very end of the report he said that the working conditions of the planners involved was not conducive to error-free working, which would lead me to suspect that the conditions that they were working under for high pressure, time pressures, high workload, may well have been those similar to those that were experiencing Cookridge.
Professionals in the NHS who we've spoken to are worried that we're failing to learn from these mistakes.
The reporting system in the UK is dysfunctional. The learning opportunities are lost. So You know, the power of reading something like the Toff report or the Beatson report is getting into the actual detail, and I think you then realise that we do need to be continually vigilant to make sure that radiotherapy is safe.
Using the Freedom of Information Act again, we asked how many adverse incidents were reported by Britain's radiotherapy centres. We were told of 805 over the last 10 years, covering a multitude of different mistakes. Yet the details of how these incidents happen are rarely made public. The question then is, how can we learn from mistakes we're not fully informed about?
He's gone from a fit, healthy young man to he just steadily, well, gone downhill.
Darryl Williams is one of the 805 reported incidents. 10 years ago, he had surgery at Manchester's Christie Hospital to remove a brain tumour. He needed 4 weeks of radiotherapy, but halfway through his treatment, a doctor told him there was a problem.
And he said, well, the good news is you won't have to come anymore. He said, but unfortunately, you've had all the radiation in the 2 weeks.
Rather than the 4, yeah.
My 10-year-old daughter couldn't have made a mistake like that.
Instead of giving 20 treatments, you just give 10 treatments. That is equivalent of more than doubling the total dose you're giving. That would be disastrous. The potential effects of that in certain parts of the body could cause death or serious tissue injury.
Were you told whether the overdoses would have an effect, negative or otherwise, on your son?
No, what they actually said was, as far as they know, it's never happened.
They'd never done it to somebody's head anybody, before, so they didn't know what the consequences would be, basically.
It was basically go home and see what happens.
Before long, Darryl was unable to read, write, talk, or even walk. What did you think was causing all that?
Radiotherapy.
First thoughts were radiotherapy.
At 28, Darryl's life today is a constant battle. He's lost some movement on one side of his body and struggles with his speech. Could it be the cancer that caused that?
He wouldn't survive years afterwards if the tumour was still growing in there. So it's not likely to be continued brain tumour activity that's causing the problem. It's much more likely to be the long-term effects of radiation.
The Christie Hospital admits a mistake was made in Darryl's treatment. After an investigation, the hospital strengthened their checking procedures so the mistake couldn't be repeated. It claims these are working effectively. Darryl is now focusing on rebuilding his life.
He's got a few problems, but he's a smashing lad and he's come through it.
Darryl Williams received all of his radiation over just 10 days. Now, whilst what happened to him is by no means a routine occurrence, we've been told that some cancer centres in the UK are dosing patients with too much radiotherapy over too short a time.
In some places we are, and it's purely resource constraint. You have waiting times, so meeting the waiting time is the target. The targets, in the way which we run the NHS today, targets are supreme. The knock-on effect is they're cured of their cancer, and many patients will be cured by radiotherapy, is they're going to have long-term side effects they wouldn't have had if they'd had a much more prolonged course of radiotherapy.
Are they told this when they
No.
come? In Professor Sikora's experience, we don't fare well in comparison to other advanced European countries.
The best way to make the comparison is look at the amount of treatments we give to a million population. So France and Germany, Switzerland, all above 40,000 per million population. In Britain, the average is 30,000, but some parts of Britain, less than 20,000 per million. Now that means we're giving half the amount of total radiotherapy. That means either patients are not receiving radiotherapy when they need it, or they are receiving it, but they're getting much faster treatments, much fewer treatments over a shorter period of time to try and get the same effect, to save resource.
The Scottish Executive told us £33 million have been invested in replacing and upgrading radiotherapy equipment in 5 Scottish cancer centres. It denied patients are being given dangerous levels of radiation by reducing the number of treatments in a bid to cut waiting times. The executive also said there has been a huge investment in staff and it doesn't believe there are any known exceptional staff shortages in Scotland's cancer centres. France has some of the best cancer survival rates in the world. Here at the St. Louis Hospital, one doctor has spent the last 14 years developing a treatment to help those cured of cancer but damaged by radiotherapy. She's had remarkable success.
If your life has been damaged, you can walk anymore, you can move, you can eat, you're in pain, you look for an answer. Patients look for an answer. I try to give them one. The treatment is a combination of 2 drugs, which we take in the morning and the evening. It is fairly simple and has few complications, maybe a bit of nausea. In terms of quality of life, it is completely tolerable. We have not discovered anything new. It's just a new combination of drugs, a bit like a new recipe.
Word has spread of Dr. Delanion's treatment, attracting patients from Britain with radiotherapy damage.
I'm not surprised to see them come from other countries. I end up with these patients because very few doctors have the expertise to look after them. I think that today, the after effects of irradiation are not an unavoidable fate.
But in Britain, for some, the after effects of radiotherapy linger, damaging lives and causing pain and suffering. And what's clear from the testimony that we've heard in this film is that we still lag far behind our European neighbours when it comes to the provision of radiotherapy.
It's not good. It's embarrassing, you're right. What can we do about it? My belief, it's not just money. It's got to be a whole new system of working. Not fancy gadgetry, just different ways of working.
The Norrises have just received the results of the independent report into Lisa's death. It states that it wasn't the radiotherapy which killed Lisa. Has it made you change your mind, Eddie?
No. It hasn't changed our mind at all.
What do you believe? What do you believe?
I still believe it was the radiation that killed our daughter. It doesn't matter what reports they make up. They can make it up till the cows come home. I'll still not believe a word they say.
The Norrises' belief is reinforced by one of the world's leading cancer specialists. Would she have died anyway?
Probably not. My understanding of the case was that she probably, on the balance of probability, she wouldn't have died if she'd received the correct dose of radiotherapy.
If you're undergoing or about to undergo a course of radiotherapy and you're worried by anything you've heard in this film, please, whatever you do, don't abandon your course of treatment. Radiotherapy really does save lives. The task now is for the doctors and the politicians to try and meet the challenges posed by the individuals we've met in this film, to try and ensure that the critical errors made in Lisa Norris's radiotherapy treatment don't happen to anyone else again.
Lisa really got into the hearts of people. She did. People loved her. She did. And I'd like to say thank you for everything that everybody's done for her and done for us. And I say it gets easier as the days goes on, but it doesn't. I don't think it'll ever get easier.